Welcome to this episode of the On Deck channel. In the last episode, we were looking at the Leopard 42 for this focus project, and it's really incredible. It is so loaded out with so much power, maybe the most powerful Leopard 42 roaming the planet right now. We got to see the solar on the coach roof and the aft frame. These guys gave us a great tour of the entire electrical system. Well, most of the electrical system. We'll see the rest in this episode. The Victron system here in the battery bank that is 24 volts, holding 1,200 amp hours of energy, which of course means that at 12 volts, which most of us are familiar with, it is holding 2,400 amp hours. What a monster that is. And now let's check out the rest of the installation on this boat in this episode. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoy.
Okay, now I'm in the port forward cabin, but this is where the Watermaker is going to go. The Watermaker panel will actually be inside this panel here. That makes it so it's hidden, so if he has guests, they can't accidentally bump it, but it pops out really easy with the way we modify it. The membranes will go under the bed because you don't have to work on those very much. Pre-filters that you do have to change fairly often will actually be under my feet in the bilge. You don't technically have to spill water to change a filter, but inevitably you spill a little bit, and it's already in the bilge, so it's not a big deal. Also, the seawater strainers are right here as well. So under this floorboard is pretty impressive. It's like everything that you really have to maintain that's kind of messy is under here. Even the aircon for the other side, the raw water strainers right here. So it makes it a really good space to just kind of get all your messy jobs done. So this is the area where all the strainers are. We've upgraded the strainers because we don't like the ones that the boat comes with originally. They're really hard to deal with and they're not very durable. These really nice Groco strainers, on the other hand, are excellent. So there's one for the Watermaker. There's one for the master cabin air conditioner, and there's one that is shared between the saloon air conditioner and the air conditioner for the hull that we're in right now, the port hull. So all of that equipment's in here, and then actually underneath the floorboard, that is where the pre-filters for the Watermaker will go. So to change those, you just have to reach in here and unscrew that, drop it, change out the filter. So all the messy stuff is going to happen right here, and I think that's really great to just kind of have it all in one place. You're not walking around the boat trying to clean all your strainers and just like getting nasty water everywhere. So he can have it all right here.
Look at the size of this thing.
Wow, what is that?
That's the pump for the Watermaker.
Whoa.
It's huge.
Yeah.
It's a DC pump.
24 volt DC. Very efficient though.
Yeah. The whole Watermaker is DC powered, 24 volt powered. So
I believe it's
how many
800 watts is what this pulls.
How many gallons an hour?
40 gallons an hour.
40 gallons, yeah.
Wow, in DC? That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
So we're behind the electrical panel now. We've actually installed quite a lot of equipment back here. We've also had to rework a lot of the electrical panel to do what we want it to do. For one, we've taken this section of the electrical panel here, which was originally 12 volts, converted it to 24 volts. In the back, we've got 2 of the 3 Phoenix chargers that are on board this boat installed right there, as well as the USB hub for those Phoenix chargers so that they can communicate with the servo. There's also a 24 volt battery protect, which if the batteries were getting low, the BMS could tell this device to shut off 24 volt power to the panel, which would kill all the air conditioners and the fridges. That would only happen in an emergency. And there's also a servo for the 12 volt system. That was factory original, and that is still there. There's also other things that you can see in here, such as circuit breakers for those Phoenixes. There's circuit breakers on both the input and the output sides. Like I said, we're really big on properly fusing and switching everything on the boat to make it as safe as possible. So you'll find a lot of that stuff in here. There's also, out of your view, there's a temperature controller for a bunch of computer fans. So these Phoenix chargers, as well as the inverter, they get quite hot when they're charging. What the temperature controller does is it's monitoring the temperature close to the inverter, as well as next to a Phoenix that's right beside it. And if it gets hot enough, about 93 degrees is what I have it set to now, it'll kick on these vent fans and it'll push that air away from them to keep them running at a higher efficiency, or a higher output, I should say. Because if they get really hot, it'll actually dial back its output. All this stuff is also mounted on that PVC board, which again is self-extinguishing.
Hey, what is a Phoenix charger?
Yeah, a Phoenix charger. So let me explain what that does. These Phoenix chargers are wired to the electrical panel such that they go to shore power number 2 and the generator. So on a boat like this, you have 2 30 amp shore power cables. And one of those is going to the Quattro inverter, The other one previously would not have gone to that inverter at all. But what we've done is we've rewired it so Shore Power 2 can go to these 3 Phoenix chargers, and collectively they can put 75 amps at 24 volts into the battery bank. Now you can also flip a switch, and if the generator's running, the generator will charge the 24 volt bank not just through the Quattro inverter, but also through these Phoenix chargers. So we can put quite a lot of power into that 24 volt bank from the generator. Generator could only put about 40 to 50% of its output into the battery bank as charging. When we add the Phoenixes, we can bump that number up to 70%, which is a number that's going to keep the generator much happier. It also enables what we call world power charging through Shore Power 2, because these Phoenix chargers, they don't care what voltage they're getting, and they don't care whether it's 50 hertz or 60 hertz. So you could plug into, with the right adapter, plug in anywhere in the world and at least charge through the Phoenix chargers. Although your Shore Power 1 through the Quattro would not work, you would at least be able to put 75 amps in and power your house loads through the Phoenix chargers. So that really adds a lot. And again, there's 3 of them, so it's very redundant. Any one of them could fail and the other 2 would still work. It's a really nice system. I'm really looking forward to testing it out. Okay, so now we're in the master cabin, and like I was saying earlier, we had to find places to put air conditioners where they don't belong. One of the ways we modify cabinets that we really like, if you're familiar with Leopards, you know about these thumb screws. Actually, they're not thumb screws anymore. They used to be, but now you have to use a tool to get them out. They're really annoying. They're super long, whatever. What we do is we modify that. We put a finger hole, and then you pop that panel out, and now you got easy access. And then rather than spend all the time and money to make a whole new piece, we just took those bolts that normally go in there, cut them off, and epoxied them in place. So they're just for show now. You can't turn them, but it makes it a lot cheaper to do this modification. So we've done it in several lockers wherever it makes sense. Now, this space was not really supposed to be used for anything. But what we've done is we fit an air conditioner in here, a 16,000 BTU air conditioner in this space. And I'm the one that put it in there, and I still honestly don't know how we got it in here. The electrical box is actually like mounted to the ceiling up there. We've used aluminum to make a cross brace that then a 3/4 inch thick piece of expanded PVC board is straddling across and then back to the bridge deck. And then that is what the air conditioner sits on. Getting the plumbing over here, getting the ducting over here, this is a very serious job. Now on the other side of the boat, on the port side, we've done or are doing the exact same thing. It's another space just like this, tiny. It shouldn't have an air conditioner in it, but somehow we're going to make it work. And that's the kind of dreams that we make come true here. So the aircon in this master cabin, not only does it feed this vent that's right above my head, and then another one that's over to my left. We're also ducting in such a way that you can feed a little bit of air up into the saloon through an existing box. Now, we're doing that because at night, what you could do is turn off the saloon aircon and keep just the master aircon on. This room would be nice and cool, or warm if it's winter, and you'd put a little bit of air conditioning up into the saloon as well, because of course that space is kind of a nebulous as far as being connected to this space. What we're doing to accomplish that is pretty interesting. We're using a blast gate, which I think is upstairs, but anyways, here's the box showing it. But the way it works is going into the vent box upstairs, there's going to be a duct coming from the saloon aircon and a duct coming from the master aircon. The one from the master aircon will have a blast gate that's electrically controlled, that the client can flip a switch and it'll open that vent, and he can flip a switch and he can close it. So that's pretty neat. I'm really looking forward to how it's going to work in practice. That's still happening right now, so these are some of the ducts that we still need to do the modifications up there. Okay, so this is where the fuse panel is and where the inverter is. As you can see, there's a lot going on in this space. It normally looks a little tidier because there's covers that go over all these wires. They're off right now as we're still working. What we've done is we've swapped the original inverter that came with the boat. It was a 3,000 watt inverter, and we swapped it for this 5,000 watt inverter. So that is plenty to power the electric galley as well as whatever he has plugged in the outlets. Whereas before, the original inverter, not only was it 12 volt, but it actually didn't even have enough power to power an electric galley. And so that's right here, and behind that which there's no way you're even gonna be able to see it. But behind that, there's actually another Phoenix charger back there. So we had to install the Phoenix charger first and then install this inverter. What we've done to make hopefully our life, but whatever technician services this boat in its future, there's a nice service loop right here, and this inverter can actually be unscrewed from its mount here and literally brought down to the floor right here, and you can work on it sitting where I'm sitting and not have to try to get in there and somehow work on it. So if there was an issue with it or it needed to be replaced, it's easy to clip some zip ties, unscrew some screws, and bring it down right here and work on it. So that's important to do.
And so when you say service loop, that just means all the cables are long enough that you can get it out without having to disconnect anything, right?
And you can actually see those cables right here. They're these big monster cables right here. And rather than run them on the other side of the inverter where you couldn't see them and you couldn't access them, and they would indeed be a little bit shorter. You'd save maybe 2 feet of cable. But rather than do that, we brought them around the inverter this way, and that way I can kind of just bring it out and turn it as I bring it out and set it down, and these cables will droop over the fuse panel, and then you can work on ground level. So stuff like that is really important when it comes to servicing the boat, especially if it ends up being a situation where the client has to service it themselves because they're in the middle of nowhere in Bahamas and they need to get something fixed. So these are things that are important to think about that I'll just say the original inverter that was in here was not thought about that way.
So one other cool mod that the team has done is all 3 heads on the boat are now selectable fresh or saltwater flush. So at the flip of a switch, there's a solenoid that will convert the toilet to be able to use freshwater or saltwater depending on your situation. Hopefully mostly freshwater because the Watermaker is working great. If for some reason you're trying to restrict, you can switch over to salt.
Okay, so this is the front of the electrical panel, which we've actually reworked quite a bit. One thing we did add that I really like is this panel here, which we are still waiting for one more breaker, but these are those switches for the RBS I was talking about. So if you needed to turn off the batteries, you could just raise this up and hit the off button, and that would turn off the batteries from the rest of the system from here. So that's really cool. Moving over one more space, this is all the 12 volt side right here. Now this is actually wired so that this bottom gang here that has the VHF, the autopilot, the instruments, and the radar, they're what are considered critical load items, whereas everything above it, lights, fans, whatever, are non-critical items. There's a battery protect here that if the 12 volt system gets low, it'll shut off all the lights and everything, but it'll keep the the VHF, the autopilot, the instruments, and the radar. Those will still be able to be powered by what little amount of battery is left. So that's pretty cool. We've done the same thing on the 24 volt side, except for there's no critical loads on the 24 volt side, so the whole 24 volt side would turn off. What used to be also part of the 12 volt system over here on the far left, we've now converted to 24 volts. And yes, we are definitely still waiting for some stickers, but these are the air cons here. There's 3 air cons, so those are powered by these switches. And then the 2 refrigerators, which are now 24 volt, are already over here. And then obviously the 12 volt DC outlet sticker will get removed because that's no longer there. So now he's got all 3 of his voltages in this one panel. It'll be really easy to work with. So I think the way that this came out is really nice.
I have questions.
Steve has questions.
What's the device called again, the disconnect device?
Smart Battery Protect.
So the Smart Battery Protect,
yeah,
is that set to a battery percentage or voltage? Or
yeah, you can.
I guess yes.
You can kind of set it however you want.
Yep. So say you set it to turn off at the equivalent of what 20% is. That would be in a situation where, say, someone leaves the aircon running and it's super cloudy and they have no solar input.
It would be hard for him to get his batteries
right?
to 20%.
Yeah.
It'd be like days of negligence.
Will that automatically repower that circuit once the batteries reach above that percentage, or is it a manual action that he has to take?
Well, we can program it. So we can say, hey, at 20% state of charge, if he's asleep and he doesn't realize that he's using too much power, turn off this system at 20%.
Sure.
Turn it back on when it gets back to 30%.
Okay.
Or whatever we set it to. So it's pretty smart like that, yeah.
Yep. So that is somewhat automated.
Yeah. All the process that's happening is automated, but you can adjust all those settings, which is really nice.
I feel like I should bring my boat to the outrigger sometime.
What? I feel like it was here recently.
That sounds great.
Oh, we got to look at the 12 volt pit. That's the one place we haven't gone. So this is the area that we affectionately called the 12 volt pit. This is where the batteries for the boat were originally intended to go. These are the two batteries that originally came with the boat. They're 12-volt batteries. The 12-volt bus bar is a little hard to see from your angle, but it's underneath my feet right here. And we haven't done too much to that except for to remove the existing inverter that came with the boat. Down here is where all the magic is happening, though, for distribution throughout the boat. There's 2 Lynx distributors. The power for these is coming directly from the battery bank on the other side of that RBS and Class D fuse that I showed you earlier. There is a feed right here off the first fuse that goes to the 24-volt panel, powering things such as the air cons and the fridges. The solar power is coming in right here. These 2 spaces will have the port and starboard alternator. The Phoenix chargers come in here, the Watermaker comes in here, and these 2 Orion chargers come in right here. The Orion chargers here are taking power from the 24-volt bank, and they're charging the 12-volt bank. And what they're doing is just keeping that system charged. That system will power all the 12-volt loads on the boat and keep them happy. There is also a temperature controller, just like we have behind the electrical panel. And when the temperature gets above 92 degrees, as I have it set right now, these 2 fans that are behind the Orions will kick on, and they'll exhaust some of that heat into a negative space in the boat between the bridge deck. It actually works remarkably well when these get hot. That it feeds off that power quickly. Those Orions, they have their own circuit breakers here. The negative side goes to this bus bar here. This, as it's labeled, it's a 1224 negative union. So this is a bus bar that connects the 12-volt system and the 24-volt system. So all the negatives on the boat are connected to one another. The positives are not, okay? So this is how we connect the 12 and 24-volt systems via the negative. We're using yellow for negative, which is the ABYC safety color. And this wire right here is going up here to the 12-volt negative bus bar, connecting those 2 systems.
I have questions again.
Yeah, I bet.
There's no reason that we should consider changing out these AGMs just now because they're basically brand new. But if, say, 2 or 3 years down the line, the AGMs are getting tired, there's no reason that this owner couldn't just change those out for 12-volt lithium batteries and effectively add to the total amp hour capacity in terms of lithium batteries.
Yeah, that's true. So these are, I think they're 220 amp hour AGMs. So that's 440 amp hours at 12 volts. But, you know, really only half or less of that is usable. Now, again, we're not really using that power because we're just keeping them fully charged all the time.
Sure, right.
So like if something just catastrophically happened with your 24-volt system, then you would say, okay, well, I've got 440 amp hours at 12 volts to power my instruments and all that stuff to get me somewhere safe and get all this taken care of. And that's plenty.
Right.
Now, I think the only reason you wouldn't really upgrade these to lithium is because we can keep these interconnected with the AGM start batteries for the engines and the generator.
Right.
And there's some benefits there in terms of being able to interconnect them to keep them all happy and charged.
Sure.
So that's one reason maybe you wouldn't. But in this instance, the cheapest, best solution was literally just to keep those batteries.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that was a cool walkthrough. That's awesome. We're making great progress, and I'm super excited to see just all these features come together. Because I mean, you and I both live on cats, and we both have battery banks that are literally half the size of this. And how much solar do you have? I know I have 2.4.
I have about 3 kilowatts, so I have about the same amount of solar.
So similar solar, but he has twice the storage capacity and amazing efficient air conditioning and huge alternators with amazing regulators. So this thing is just going to be a powerhouse.
It's absolutely ridiculous, to be honest with you.
It really is.
I mean, it's definitely not something you would normally put in a 42-foot boat.
Right.
This is more similar to 45-foot or even closer to 50 feet.
Right.
To have a system this powerful.
So. I think it's cool just seeing how far it's come, though, the fact that we can get this much battery amperage into a 42-foot boat, and you know, this much air conditioning BTUs, this efficiently, and this kind of charging power from the alternators. It's wild that this is going to be a floating air conditioned palace on the hook almost 24/7 with very little input from anything else.
Let's not hide the fact, though, that it's an insane amount of work to make this stuff fit in the boat.
No question.
Because if you were just going to do the easy thing and just like, let me see how much lithium I can put in here and put in 2 air cons, but they're high efficiency, whatever. That's a lot cheaper than what we've done here.
Sure.
What we've done is really like customize the boat by modifying some of the fiberglass, modifying some of the platforms, putting things in places that they don't really belong, but that they fit.
Right.
Like just barely.
Right.
And it takes a lot of time to like really figure that out and get it just right.
No question.
And it takes a big skill set. I mean, like just to get that one aircon, you needed like a guy who fabricates with metal, a guy who fabricates with wood. You needed HVAC guy, you needed some installers. Like there's just a lot that went into that to really like get it into place.
Sure.
And the amount of hours that takes is not something that most people want to do.
Right.
But if you want to do something like that, crazy custom, get things installed in places where they're still not going to take up your personal storage, you know where to go.
That's right.
Right here.
Nailed it.